All right. Welcome to another episode of Stackability AI. We got another fresh new AI founders episode for you. Today we bring you Cahill Camden. Hey, Cahill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Austin. Glad to be here, man. Let's chat.
Yeah, super excited. So we like to start these episodes off with like what I like to refer to as like a little AI icebreaker. So what I do is I ask all of the guests that come on the show to share one of their AI light bulb moments. So maybe this could be a time when you were working on a project, you were building some of your own stuff, and you just had like an aha moment. You're like, wow, like this is so cool, or this concept really makes sense, sort of thing. Um, what do you got? Do you have something that you could share with us on that front?
Absolutely, man. So my aha light bulb moment was when I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, must have been a couple years back, and he mentioned GPT-2, and it wasn't open to the public. You had to apply to be a part of it. And he talked about how it was doing natural language processing, and it's like he didn't go off for very long about it, but he was talking about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is coming, this is going to be huge. And I applied to get one of the spots. I was one of, I don't know, it's 20, 30, 50,000 people who got it, and I'm not a developer, so I couldn't do anything with it. And I was like, oh man, I have this ability to play with AI, years before, maybe 2 years before it came out. And the AI developers that I talked to were just way above my price range. And I was like, oh man, I have access to this thing that's going to be awesome, and I can't do anything. So that was my aha moment. So then when OpenAI came out with GPT-3, and they actually had a front end to the platform, I was instantly on it. And I said to our team, I said, we need to change everything that we're doing and include AI in it. And so that was a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, whatever it is now. Yeah.
I love it. I love asking people that question because like I never know what I'm gonna get, and it's a that's a really good response. So I have a GPT-2 story. So I remember about the same time. So I'm a big fan of Reddit, and I do tons of reading on Reddit. And there's I don't know if you're familiar with the R Simulator um, Reddit, and essentially there was a whole period of time where essentially like GPTs were training themselves, excuse me, off of subreddits, right? And you could go in and you could like just watch these chatbots talking to each other, and they were being trained off of like the craziest like. I mean, think about what the news was like back in like 2018, right? So that's what these things are being trained on, and they're just having conversations about like all of this just like loaded stuff with like politics and race, and it was scary because it was pretty good. And I remember showing it to some of my friends and being like, "Hey guys, like, what do you think about this?" And they're freaking out because they didn't know what they were really reading, because like nobody knew what a chatbot was back
Yeah.
then, and it was taken for face value as real human beings having a conversation. So that's when I started to get, that was my like holy shit like light bulb moment. I'm like, wow, like this is gonna be something else in a few years, and here we are. So
Yeah, absolutely. And as we have talked, we were talking about just before we got on. I'm an avid sci-fi reader, so understanding AI and the more creative kind of philosophical directions of where I think it might go. Um, when those types of experiences happen, where you hear about GPT-2, or you hear about chatbots training other chatbots, then your mind just, the light bulb moment goes on, and you're like, wow, this is happening. It's for real. And you know, you decide what to do from that point.
yeah, the decision is yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, while we have time together is, so I'm really interested in how AI can help the SMB, so the small medium sized business. And I'd love to talk about some of the products, that you've talked about. So maybe, or that you're working on, that you've built. Sorry. So maybe you could start off by just giving the audience a little bit of a primer on like who you are, like what your background is, and then I'd like to get into some of the use cases and strategies around. Say I'm a small business owner and I want to start implementing AI into my organization, but I don't really know where to start. Like I have some
Yeah.
ideas, right? Like I've been hearing all kinds of stuff about AI for like the last year and a half, 2 years, and I don't know what to do, right? So I need help. So I'd like to
Yeah.
maybe like walk through that thought exercise. But let's start by hearing a little bit about yourself.
That sounds good. So I have been working at my own agency and we do digital marketing for tech companies. Primarily, I've been focused in the Web3 or blockchain space. So I've helped a number of crypto exchanges grow from near zero to getting acquired. I've worked with some of the largest companies in the industry. And from that, I have been very immersed in kind of cutting edge technology, let's call it, on the blockchain side of things. And so in my agency, what ended up happening was I was doing a number of marketing activities for clients. And I thought, hey, there's got to be ways to speed up what we're doing and make it more efficient. There are tools out there that can do that. And I just went down the rabbit hole of, hey, maybe we can build some of these ourselves and then offer it to other people. And so that's basically how I started. Um, I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer, but I've been around it enough to, I think, understand and understand the concepts. And so we started building some of the tools, and AI came out at the time when we were in the midst of launching some of these things, and so we just pivoted and said, hey, let's just include AI into everything that we're doing so that it can enhance all of our tools.
Yeah, great. That's quite a forward thinking move, right? Hey, I see this whole movement coming, super valuable. Like let's build. So can you give us an example of some of the tools that you built?
Sure. So like I said, I have a digital marketing agency, a boutique agency. One of the things that we've been focusing on is getting tech companies publicity, getting them brand awareness, helping them drive traffic to their sites. And so we've been focused on PR activities, podcasts, getting in the press, getting features, getting quoted, etc. And so one of the tools that we built was a tool to help us accelerate that in terms of using other platforms. And now we're really focused on building the tool that we have called Echo Jockey, which helps small, medium-sized businesses, helps us as an agency get our clients on more podcasts. And so this is where we're applying AI. We're applying generative AI to bios, to pitches, to finding better matches for you, and we're going down this path so that small businesses, small medium-sized businesses, and the clients that we work with can be on more podcasts.
Yeah. Podcasting, as we both know, has become really, really popular over the last few years, and also like an integral part of one's, marketing. I think like one of the reasons that I have a podcast is so I can network with people and I can talk to people like yourself, and things happen because of those conversations, right? So it's all tied in together. So people might be thinking, oh, how does like a podcasting platform plug into what I'm doing with my SMB, my small and medium sized business? But you know, I think that you're going to see more and more of this in the future, because I do think that we're seeing a shift in how digital marketing is conducted. And I think even if you look at just like SEO alone, what AI is potentially doing to search. So I don't know if you've been seeing any of this in the news, but there's a lot of like fear around traditional SEO and SEM marketing, right? In terms of like just having all kinds of generative AI content that is like kind of low value, because if you have all of this content being automated and pumped out, right? And say like the majority of the companies that are doing that think that it's just like a way to get more content into, their websites so they can start ranking. Like it's not working. And I think that Google is starting to see this. So I've been reading reports of legitimately like SEO agencies going out of business because Google is starting to really shift the algorithm here in some ways. And what I think is going to happen, and I know this is kind of a tangent, but it's super interesting. I think that YouTube might be the new search, like short form and long form video, because until AI can like completely take that over, I think it's harder to build a quality YouTube channel. It's harder to build quality short form video content. So I think that YouTube's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, and that kind of plays into podcasts because so this podcast started off as an audio podcast, and then we just recently converted it over to a video podcast. So I'd be interested if you're taking any of that into consideration as well. Does your tool work for video podcasts, or is it just for audio podcasts?
Yeah, great question. So I actually agree with you. I think that Google's in a position right now where they're really concerned about their dominance in search, mostly because people are also going directly to GPT to get answers. It's like I don't want to read through dozens of low quality SEO posts. I always joke about this, with my friends where you want to search for, what is the best computer to use, and it's like, what is a computer, why is a computer, how is a computer, and then it's just nonstop SEO stuffed articles just to get like larger content pieces out there with more backlinks, and it's garbage content. And so actually one of the on that note, one of the tricks that I've recently started to do was whenever you do your search, at the end of it put before and then a colon 2023, and the results are completely
Yeah,
different because it's
yeah,
it's pre AI generated content, and you will actually get better results.
I
Um,
love it.
but to your point, I think that YouTube is going to be again a forward piece where people search, and GPT itself. So to address your question, yes, Echo Jockey will. Right now, it's podcasts, but we've got plans for anything virtual that is podcasts, YouTube, streaming, virtual conferences, all of that, real life on the web. So not real life speaking events, not real life conferences, but anything virtual. That's where we're going with this.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. So I like it. Um, So let's help the audience out with a practical example, and then we can come back more to Echo Jockey and all of that. So say that I'm a SMB business and I want to get started with AI. I have a few ideas. Like, how would you recommend that this company gets started? Say that they do trade show events, right? And say that they've been in business for like 30 years and it's pretty much been a manual process up until now. They have some social channels. They have a pretty decent mailing list. Maybe it's got 10, 20, 30,000 people on it that they've accumulated over the years. They have a website that, may be a little bit antiquated, but you have all of these things that you need to pull together, right? You need to like really have two different experiences on your website. You have to have a vendor experience because let's be honest, these are the people that are paying the most money, right, to the company because they're buying high ticket, booths and space at the show. But then you also have to have people come into the show. So you can't ignore that segment of your business. But then, like to put all these pieces together, um, you know, where would one start? Say, I just want to start with marketing. Um, like what are some of the tools that we could think about using right off the bat?
Yeah, that's a really great question. If I could, the way I would answer that, let's answer it this way. I think to understand where you can apply AI, you've got to understand how AI works right now. Um, and and so I think this then unlocks a number of different avenues where you can apply the technology, because AI is this kind of ubiquitous term that covers large language models, generative AI, images, and then we have obviously the kind of Hollywood version of what it is or what it's going to become, good or bad. So to answer that for a trade show, the first thing I think everyone should know about AI, if you don't already know, is that it works on large amounts of language processing, which means that if you're just looking at it from a general perspective, it's okay at a bunch of things, but it's not great at any one thing. So if you're going to apply AI to something, you first want to be able to direct it to think about that one thing. Okay, so that's part of it. Now, what can you direct it towards? Well, anything that uses large amounts of language, or that uses patterns in language or patterns in images or video, you can apply AI to. So this could be anything related to brainstorming that trade show in terms of the layout. There are tools that you can use that will visually sketch up your trade show booth. You can use it for marketing materials. So anything related to marketing, again, you can have it create the emails that you're going to send out. You can have it create content. You can have it edit your content. You can have it create all sorts of ideas about what content you want to produce. Okay, you can also use it to create audio. There are tools out there that will, you literally write a script and you will have a human style voice like yourself or myself speaking. So you can create anything related to audio now that you can send to your customers. That could be a voice note that's customized to every single one of your 10,000, 50,000 subscribers. Like, that is possible. Um, you can also do video. You can do images. There's a lot of different areas, and so it does get overwhelming quite quickly. But I think if you start with the understanding that, okay, it works off of a lot of language, and that's how the models currently are designed, large language models, LLMs, and then you can tweak that. Well, now you can apply it to different things. So that's how I would answer that question. I suppose the starting place that will probably get the most impact and the most value is in things related to marketing, things related to design, things related to organization. That is typically, it's quite good at that. And again, you've got to direct it to focus in on that, but that's where I would probably start.
Yeah. Um, Good answer. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I always like to start as simple as possible, and even be like, think, do I even need AI for this? Because I think that um, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. Like, it has very specific solves for very specific problems. So the advice that I like to give is start simple. Pick one thing. I think marketing is great. Content generation, image generation. You know, subscribe to Mid Journey. I'm sure you would probably have a Chat GPT 4 account, and you could use Dali to generate some images and some website copy. But like, I would say from there, like, don't just use that content, make it your own, train it to sound, like your own voice, right? And that's where like prompting comes in, and being like, hey, act like this sort of person, have this sort of tone, try and describe your tone to get the ideal response out. So really basic things. And I think that, once the person that doesn't have the experience with this goes through a few of those exercises, then like the layers of the onion start to like,
Yeah.
peel, and then you be like, oh, okay, cool. And then like all these light bulb moments that we've been talking about start to come to fruition. Um, so yeah. What about, so that being said, I mean, I kind of answered the question, but the ROI always comes into play. I think what a lot, even like big organizations, are really struggling with the return on investment with AI and its application. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned some things that are interesting to think about, like prompt engineering and how to leverage that. The the ROI, my feeling is like the ROI on AI depends on what you're applying it to. And it depends on how you're thinking about using it as a tool. So, for example, if you're thinking about using AI to completely generate all of your content or all of your images, um, maybe it's not quite there yet. So, the ROI would be very low because you're going to spend all this time, money, investment trying to train a model, push it to do something that it just can't quite accomplish yet. But if you think about it in terms of enhancement or speed improvement for your current employees or for current tasks that you're doing, then it can dramatically help. So you can have someone who is, let's take content creation again, someone who's already a great writer can, or a great copywriter or great editor. Now they can edit 3 times as much, maybe 2 times as much, maybe 5 times as much, depending on how you train the model. And now that value becomes very, very valuable. Um, with images, it's a little more difficult, I would think, I would say, and same with video and audio, because it's so new. Like, and this is the last 6 months, really. It's been longer than that, but in the last 6 months, it's really starting to get good. Um, but even still, you probably will get better value with having a really good designer help you with certain things. But if the really good designer uses AI to get a whole bunch of ideas, now you've just enhanced their ability to come up with something that is really valuable for you. So I would think of AI as currently an enhancer, versus, hey, I'm just going to give it all of this entire task and have it then give me a result. So that's kind of how I think about it. And in that case, it's it's a dramatic improvement. Like the developers that we use that use AI as co-pilots or assistants, like they code way faster.
Oh yeah.
They solve way more problems. It's unbelievable. Like you can give a mid-level guy the ability to be, you know, high level or low high level in terms of their output in code and their accuracy, and you're just like, this is amazing. And so that is a very, very strong ROI there.
Yeah. I have to agree 1,000% on that point, especially with the co-pilot, realization there. So I remember when I first picked up I when I first installed the Copilot plugin into VS Code, which is the IDE that I use to write code in, and I was like, I'm gonna give this thing a shot, and I didn't really know what to expect, and like there was no turning back because
100%.
the level of productivity that I've gained is amazing, and it made me even like programming even more because all the repetitive stuff that you have to do, all like the quote unquote like boilerplate code, like it just writes it like in a split second, and then you can go in and be like, well, I don't really like how you generated that. You just go change it, like tweak it up a little bit and like move on to something else. And you can build so much faster. And the same goes for, you know, like you said, writing. And the designer co-pilot is fantastic. Say I'm working on a logo, and the blank page syndrome is like instantly solved because I can be like, okay, this is what my company is about, and I need this logo, kind of give it this look and feel, and it's going to spit something out. The text is going to be all wrong. It's not going to be coherent in any way, but you just Photoshop that part out, put your own typography in there, and you've just like saved like tons of money and tons of time. So,
Exactly. And this is exactly what we're doing with Echo Jockey and Press Jockey, right? It's like,
yeah.
when you're creating, if you're pitching a podcast or you're pitching the media or press, sometimes it's difficult to come up with different story angles over and over and over and over and over and over again that are interesting, that are relevant
Mhm.
to to that podcast or that media outlet, and you've got to go and do your research. Or you can use AI to quickly generate 3 5 responses and like angles because it read the last article or it read the description of the podcast and it read your bio, which is what we do. And it says,
Yeah.
okay, based on this description and based on your bio, here are some topics that we think would be relevant for this podcaster. And even if all of those, let's say 3 suggestions are wrong, it sparks that thought in you and saves you a ton of time. So you don't have to like sit there staring at the page trying to figure it out all yourself, right? So
Yep.
this is what I mean by the enhancement. And that ROI is dramatic. Like it is very, very dramatic.
Yeah, for sure. So that being said, why do we need big teams of people anymore?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think there have been comments of, even from Sam Altman where he said, the next $1 billion companies are going to be, 2 or 3 people teams when AI gets to a certain level. I don't doubt that is true at all. I think eventually that is a possibility. Right now, I don't think we're there. And I think right now, again, thinking about AI as an enhancer for your current skill set is the best way to move forward. Um, which means that you can be more productive in your SMB. You can be more productive in your job, your skill set, and so you can do more. You can ask for more money. You can charge customers. You can again enhance what you're doing quite a bit. Um, and that frees up time for people on your team to do other things that are equally important or more important, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm hesitant to get too much into the Sam Altman $1 billion company thing because I think it's a massive black hole. I'd like to, but I think that there's a few things to that comment. I think that if you think about $1 billion company, in this case, it can only really be like a software company,
Totally.
something that doesn't have like supply chains and like because then you're talking about like robotics and you have the whole nother flip side of the coin to this whole conversation, which is like a whole nother thing, right? And like yeah, that's being worked on, but it's very hard to do robotics. It's hard to program robotics right now. Like robotics kind of need like explicit directions. Like autonomous robots are kind of like not there quite yet, to my understanding. So it limits the amount of companies, which is fine. It could happen, but I think that's like a sensationalist comment in
Oh,
some
of course.
ways.
Yeah. Marketing. It's a
It's cool.
marketing
It's
ploy
cool.
as well. Yeah.
It's cool to think about it. I don't. I mean, that would be interesting if it does happen someday. I think that it's quite a bit ways off. But I digress. I
I don't know if it's that far off. Just to jump in quickly, like how many people did Instagram have when they sold to Facebook for, what is it, 1.8 billion? I think they had like
mm,
12 people or 16 people, something like that. Like it was a
yeah, I'm
very,
not
very
sure.
small team,
It's a good
um,
point. It's a good point.
and that
Yeah.
was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And
Mhm.
so, do I think it will be 2 people? No, but could you have a 6 person team that crushes it in software? And yeah, you're
Oh, for
right. I
sure.
think software is like the
100%.
only spot that
Yeah.
this really makes sense with the sensationalist comment of like $1 billion company. But yeah,
Yeah.
could you have a team under 10 people that makes $1 billion? I think it's possible. I think we're
Yeah.
getting there. We're getting closer. Give it a year or two,
Yep.
and we'll
Yep.
see.
Yeah, in some small cases, I think so for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So that brings me to my next question. And I know that this is something that you can definitely answer well. How do you build a team around this? So I know that you've obviously built a few things here in your time, and Echo Jockey is your latest creation here. And I understand that you've bootstrapped that, which is amazing. I'm a huge fan of the bootstrap businesses, so congratulations on that. What's your methodology around building a pretty highly technical team and not being a technical person from like a traditional coding standpoint. Like how did that whole thing work out? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things to consider. One, if you're not a technical founder, it is a lot more difficult for sure. Which means you need to have good friends or advisors who are very technical, who know what they're talking about to help you out. For example, I have a few friends who have built, very decent sized SMBs. Some have exited companies as CTOs and technical co-founders, and so I've even had some of them interview or take a review of resumes or CVs from people that I'm looking at hiring. And so that is super helpful because I don't know the questions to ask. I can learn, but I don't know exactly what to say. So that's been extremely helpful. If you don't have that, that's also fine. I think it's just you need to spend some time, you know, doing research to try. And YouTube is a great place to understand a little bit about technologies and a little bit about what you might need and why you might need it. And so I just go down kind of content rabbit holes. Um, I know my partner. She's kind of like, "What are you watching? You're watching something about video game light refraction from the guys who created Doom. Why?" And I'm like, I don't know. It just seemed interesting. Like I just thought it was a very interesting talk. Like John Romero and those guys. It's interesting stuff. Or like microservices from the CTO of Netflix talking at Google, and I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but it seems interesting. And that comes up later on when you're talking to someone who is doing server architecture for you on AWS, and you can actually speak to, like, hey, I saw this video about microservices. Is that something we can do? Like, what is that about? And then they'll explain it to you. So that's kind of how I started. And then hiring, for me, it's um, I think this is always a very difficult thing. I look for people who fit my culture the best, and my style of working, which is um, I'm not always looking for the top expertise per se. I'm looking for the people who can figure out the problems, and they're willing to put in the work to figure things out. And so I use a test always for my main hires, the Colby score. This is something that I've just found is very accurate for my work style, and I give it to everybody. And I really look for, a culture of, can you figure out the problems from a technical side and explain to me why you got to your answers, even if it's wrong, and even if we try something and it doesn't work, can you then dissect that and say, okay, here's what we tried, here's why it was wrong, here's what I think we can do next, and here's the research that I've done, and let's experiment with this. So that's what I look for, versus the person who knows it all, or versus the person who's not as in it for the learning. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, the culture bit is so important, and I kind of wish more companies would hire that way. A lot say that they do, but I don't believe that they all do. um, the Colby test is cool. I've heard of that before, and I think that that's a good move. So I'm glad you've had success with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you kind of answered the next question I'm going to ask around like technical challenges, and I know that you've probably faced some with Echo Jockey, right? Because you're surfacing a very very large amount of data, and this is where interviewing this way really comes into play because some of these problems are new problems with relatively new technologies that we're trying to solve. Um, so, could you elaborate a little bit further on some of the challenges that you faced in building this AI business and how you've overcome them?
There's always challenges with AI, and it's moving so fast. Like really, it's moving so fast that we take time to implement something, and then it's like, oh no, that's not as relevant anymore. And then 2 months later, it's like, oh no, there's an updated version of that, and it's like, oh my god. gosh, really? Um, but that's just this. That's what happens with AI. Some of the challenges that we face, with like you said, surfacing such a large data set gets into things like you really have to start thinking when you're dealing with big data, like, and so let's put into perspective, 180 million podcast episodes, um, and we're just dealing with a small fraction of the content that's available in each episode to start. Um, let's say 180 million podcast episodes is about 200, 250 million hours of content transcribed in at, how many words you speak per minute. You're talking about very large data sets. And so there's things that we just don't even know we're going to encounter. And one of the things that I've always done consistently is I just ask questions a lot, like a lot, a lot. Like I'll go to my friends and they'll say, "Hey, have you guys ever dealt with something like this?" And so, for example, one of my friends, he's dealt with things very close to that, tens of millions of products, yeah, also all sorts of data, etc. And so he will give me an answer. And I have someone else who does generative AI, and he'll give me a slightly different answer, but with some overlap. And then I'll start doing my own research, and we go down that path. I'm a big, big believer and proponent in hiring, on demand hiring for experts. So I will throw up, for example, a post on Upwork or on Amazon, to like AWS, to hire an expert for 1 hour to just ask them all the questions that I want to ask, to get details and insights about how I'm going to build something out. And I'll pay the premium price for that, $250 an hour, $300 an hour, sometimes even higher, just for that 1 hour conversation, so that that can guide us down the path that we need to go down. So that's how I've tackled really hard problems. And then there's always like, you don't know until you actually get into it. So you, even with that, you start going down a path, um, and then you run into a wall, and then you have to readjust. And so that's kind of how we've been dealing with it.
Yeah. So say you do spend $300 an hour. I mean, that's like 300, $600 well spent, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of a small price to pay for the upside in what you're developing and the value that it can bring your company and the users that are using it. So I've
Absolutely.
had similar um, ideas, and I know that we started talking about the SMB, and then we've gone off. The thing about these conversations is it's so easy to go off into these like tangents, but it's fun talk. I think that there's room for this sort of community for small business owners that just want to come in and ask questions about AI, right? Like maybe it's like a very inexpensive Slack channel or something. They can come in, they can start asking questions. You know, there's a bunch of experts in there, tons of knowledge sharing that could happen there. But I'm always interested in seeing like how larger scale problems have been, solved in the enterprise and how you can like make them more applicable to like the little guy, right?
Well, so
So
I'm
it's
I'm still a little guy, like, sorry to jump in. I'm still a little guy for now. I think to your point, it's like the underlying concept is what I hope SMBs take away. It's that you don't need to pay, $300 an hour is like a rare case. You don't need to pay
Mhm.
that to someone on a part-time basis or an ongoing basis. That's crazy.
Yeah.
For me, that's crazy. But you should know that you can get on-demand help even for half an hour. Like, as an example, one of the guys on my team who's been consulting with me for 5 years now, he's fantastic. He's way out of my range, and I have been working with him for almost 5 years for like an hour a week kind of thing, and he has saved me, generated, tens of thousands of dollars in value, like way way higher than what I've paid him. Um, but even if you only wanted to use him for half an hour, he's available, and so you can get this on demand help that is really, really valuable for any project that you're doing, whether it's a small marketing project whether you just want to hire, like you said, if there's no community that you can go to ask these questions, hire someone who knows what they're talking about AI to just give you a walkthrough for 30 minutes. Pay them $50, and it's $100 an hour, but it's like $50 for half an hour, and they're going to just give you the lessons, answer all the questions, and that is so worth it. And so I think that's one of the main takeaways in terms of solving difficult problems and figuring out how to scale as an SMB.
Yep, exactly. Do you read many newsletters?
I don't. No, I
Okay.
don't. I let's see, my information consumption. So I don't read many newsletters at all. I consume a lot of content on YouTube, and I've really actually cut back. But like I shared some random examples. Like I'll watch things that I find interesting, even though I'm not in that space. So like I've always thought, as an example, of that Netflixing. I thought, wow, Netflix just really came onto the scene and did fantastically well. Um, and I liked some of the talks that happen at Google, and so I was like, oh, this seems like interesting. Microservices, yeah. How do they manage millions of videos at once, and it's instantaneous? That's really cool. Let me put it on 1.2 times speed, and let's hear what he's saying, and then I'll drop it down to 1 time speed and just listen. So I consume content that way, primarily.
I think it's a really good lesson. So I was reading this article today and it was talking about, I think the metric was like 33% or something of the executives that manage these teams in the workforce like have no idea what their employees are say that their engineers are like capable of or can even like speak the language, right? So there's this huge gap, in skill from the top in some cases to like the people that are doing all of the work. So I think that, you know, even if you're the SMB here and you decide to like not go full steam ahead with anything AI, like the least thing that you can do is you can educate yourself and learn and read YouTube newsletters, all of this stuff. There's so much good content out there. I mean, hell, there's like Google and MIT, like all of these places, Harvard, like they're all open sourcing or
Yep.
giving free classes right now. You can take legitimately like computer science classes from Stanford online for basically free, and that to me is fascinating, and it really goes to show where I think things are going in the future. And it's not only going to be like a completely different way that we do business, it's going to be a completely different paradigm around like going to school and like where you got your knowledge from and all this. Like I went to art school and I do really, 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 really well for somebody that went to art school. Right. So now, like the next permutation of that, right, taking the whole schooling out of it and saying like I'm going to get all of these new age skills from either YouTube or some like free like Ivy League like it's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah,
It's
it's
fantastic.
it's crazy. I think I
So
think maybe one of the challenges, or one of the things to overcome, is just balancing the kind of entertainment value, of platforms like YouTube and Netflix and whatnot. Like, of course, we all want to try and take some downtime, and I'm super guilty of that. And don't get me wrong, the algorithms are designed to keep you just watching random things. So there is that aspect that you need to overcome. But I think if you can balance that out and take, a little less time on the pure entertainment, and find the entertaining chats or the entertaining, you know, discussions, fireside chats, just to start educating yourself, and then see what you like, and then maybe go down the route of, Udemy, Coursera, Harvard, Ivy League schools, Google. Like, there's all sorts of things, like you said, that are available. I think that will help take SMBs and, listeners really far, because there's so much that is coming out. Um, there's a lot of people are just willing to share information about it.
yeah, routines, and to your point about people willing to share, I mean, that's like a legitimate business angle these days, because I think like the thinking is, hey, like I can share all this knowledge because the majority of people aren't going to implement it. Like they're going to pay me to do it or something like that. But there are cases where that isn't the case. And, you can be a super smart person with tons of motivation and curiosity, and you acquire all of these skills. So, fun fact, that's why we named this podcast Stackability, because it's a play off of the term skill stacking. So you're stacking your skills, whatever those skills might be, to get to your outcome. In this case, it's AI in business. So, you know, by way of these conversations, hopefully, the listeners accumulate some uh, some information. So that being said, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your venture or plug any of your products? I know we definitely traverse across a lot of different stuff here today, so I'd like to give you a few minutes to talk about Echo Jockey in more detail if you want.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I think if you're looking to learn more about AI, definitely, this podcast is great. I think you have a lot of great people on here who are very valuable resources. And then again, you can find what you like and go down that little rabbit hole, explore some of the things that, guests talk about on YouTube. I'm a big fan of that. Or find blogs that talk about it and just do a bit of research and, find out what you like in this space and see what you can potentially implement in your own SMB. As for me, yeah, the platforms that we've got, Echo Jockey is one that will really help you get on a lot of podcasts if you are interested in building your marketing and getting your brand in front of more people. So it helps you find podcasts out of millions of podcasts, gives you email addresses, gives you social profiles so that you can pitch podcasters with well written pitches. The AI will help you draft a pitch. You got to edit it, make it your own, tweak it, and then hit send. And that's where it's going. And then we also are adding other things like YouTube, streaming services, etc. Right, AMAs, that type of thing. So definitely check it out if you're interested in podcasting. And you can also sign up for helpapodcasterout.com. So that's a free service that we're running, where podcasters will be able to just post for guests. And if you think that you are a great fit for it, you can just respond via email, and that it's that easy. So those are the two things that I would definitely recommend. And if you want to, follow me, or see what I'm up to, I rarely post on Twitter, but I figured I would probably mention it anyways. It's Cahill underscore Camden. Um, I rarely post, but you can message me and I check my messages. So there you
Yep,
go.
I love it. Yeah, good old X, Twitter, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it
X.
these days.
Sorry,
But
sorry, Elon.
it's funny because there's definitely like a camp of people that refuse to call it X. Like I'm kind of like that. It's like, well, you might as well just call it what it is, but it just doesn't feel right because it's Twitter. But yeah, um, fantastic. I'm gonna use Echo Jockey for sure. I'm really interested in how it could possibly work if you are a podcast and maybe you want to work with other podcasts, right? Maybe like I want to become a guest on other podcasts. Like it kind of can be a cross promotional tool for podcasters, not just like people that want to be on podcasts. It could be podcasters that want to be on podcasts, right? It's kind of the same thing.
A hundred
Um,
percent. We've got a whole
but
roadmap for things like, ad networks and, sharing and cross promos and all sorts of things that podcasters will be able to do. But again, we're a small team, bootstrapped.
mhm,
And so, we're getting there step by step. But I'd love to have you on the platform.
I love it. I'm excited. All right, Mr. Cahill Camden, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was an awesome conversation. And I hope the listeners out there, I hope you guys liked it. Um, Feel free to subscribe, hit the like button. It really helps us out. We're a small growing channel and there's a lot of competition out there. So we're trying to put the most valuable, entertaining, great content out in front of you guys. So I really enjoy the time. Thanks
Thanks for having
for
me on.
stopping by. Until next time. Thanks for checking out this episode of Stackability AI. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as we publish new content all the time. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.